Hi everyone, this is Mike Leiden here with International Academy of Consciousness. I'm here today to interview another guest who is going to be a presenter at the first International Congress of Conscientiology, which means consciousness science from a post-materialist and multidimensional point of view. The Congress is going to be in Portugal from May 22nd to the 24th next month. If you want more information or to sign up, just check out the links below. My guest, Flávio Amaral, today he's got a degree in economics, a master's in business administration, and is a professional in the financial sector. He was a volunteer instructor, founder, and administrator of conscientiological institutions from 1999 to 2012. He's the co-author of Inversão Existencial and author of Teáticas da Invexologia, and is currently an instructor of Parapsychology, conscientiology, and projectiology at the Namaskar Institute. And he also studies parapsychology at the Institute of Parapsychology and Mental Sciences in Joinville. Is that right?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Joinville, Brazil. Okay, great. So thanks for doing this. And I guess to start, I just wanted to ask you maybe to give a brief summary. Let's say that when people walk away from your lecture or your presentation at the ICC, what would you want them to walk away with? Maybe a few key points without spoiling it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me too, and good evening for all the guests. Basically, I want to give a glimpse of what is science or pseudoscience, or at least in the definition I used in this paper. Some hints about scientific practices and community practice, like processes to reach the knowledge that is known as science.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and just so the audience knows, the title of your talk is Preliminary Study of Evidences of Pseudoscience and Conscientiology. So I've got two questions about this. One is, how are you defining, actually maybe three questions. How do we define science? How do we define pseudoscience? And how are we defining conscientiology? Because for the viewers out there, I'm defining conscientiology broadly as consciousness science, which is what it is. But then there's also, like you said, like a community practice of, or like, I guess you could say like there's psychology, right? Study of the mind, study of the brain, the nervous system, human behavior, and psychology also has a history and different approaches to kind of getting at the same thing. And so we could say that some approaches are, under the lens of science, more scientific or less scientific. Some might have to do with more tacit knowledge, let's say like psychoanalysis, for instance, right? Has more to do with tacit knowledge. It's probably not the most scientific under the most, rigorous scientific lens, although there's still a lot of valid information there. So like defense mechanisms, the idea of defense mechanisms came out of psychoanalysis, and that's something that's very, very useful idea. However, it wouldn't be the same as, let's say, I don't know. I mean, if you just adopt the theory, let's say, of psychoanalysis, and that's kind of your point of view, you might box yourself in a way, because if you didn't look at, let's say, evidence-based practices of other types of therapy, then your mind would never really be open to other types of approaches to behavior. Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot. I usually don't talk this much, but
you're going in the right direction. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, can we look at conscientiology the same way? In other words, like, consciousness science is a very, 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 very new thing, especially from a first-person, third-person type of approach. And we're still kind of working it out, or my sense anyway, is that we're still really trying to work it out as to what is the best way to really make such an approach scientific. And it sounds like maybe your talk is going to answer some of those questions.
Yes, more or less to define the topics you just asked, what is science and pseudoscience and conscientiology.
Yeah.
These are essential things. Since you started with conscientiology, and with the example of psychoanalysis, let me try to develop that.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't know too much about psychoanalysis, but yes, in this direction, a group of ideas or a field of study um, is the product of some practices and some processes. So we could understand conscientiology as an idea, but to understanding the approach I use in this paper, we have to understand it connected to the community, the cognitive community, which produce the ideas too. So we have product, and process.
So what you're saying is that, this is what I was trying to get at before, is that there's science in the abstract, and then there's the practice of science by a certain group of people, and then there's the culture of that group of people. And like the
Yeah,
culture, or like, let's say culture, political,
the way the ideas are developed and produced and studied.
okay. So if we were to look at consciousness science or conscientiology, like in the same way that there could be, let's say that conscientiology or consciousness science is a product. There are different little factories that make the same product,
Yeah, there you go.
and they go about the process differently. And so your analysis is of the different methods of manufacturing. Is that kind of what it is?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
There you go.
So what are you going to
And
say? That's what
okay,
I want to know.
so
Yeah.
yes, some characteristics that may become more clear. Well, just first I have to mention this. This is based on a paper by Mario Bunges. He's an Argentinian philosophist who is very well known for his, let's say, debunking, or he wrote this paper in 1984 for the PsyCop, which is the Society for Investigation of Paranormal Claims. So he's kind of not very welcome in the parapsychology groups, for example. And this is a way I chose because maybe for his strong bias against paranormal studies, let's put it that way, maybe has something to say. And I think in this paper he has good insights for us to understand how what should be a scientific practice and what should not be. And I know that even that science and pseudoscience are both terms that are ideologically used to label whatever your opponent is. So I'm totally against that. But anyway, I have to use pseudoscience as defined by Mario Bunges by 12 characteristics. I will explain 4, which more or less encompass these 12. To understand a scientific practice, the cognitive community that develops the work is a community of researchers, while in the pseudoscientific practices, they tend to be a community of, he calls it, believers. I don't like too much this word, but what he means by that is that they are more accepted by their adhesion, is that the word? Their acceptance of the beliefs or the ideas, instead of being accepted by their working on research areas, the research experience. This is one of the problems that Bunges raises in his paper. The other one is the domain. pseudosciences normally deal with the domain of the unreal, which is the domain in topics which cannot be or are not checked, are not put into test to test their validity, their objectivity, or their reality. The third topic is that normally it's a field more practical than cognitive. By practical he means it's interested in how to develop human potential and influence people. That's to quote his sentence. By practice versus cognitive, we should understand that a practice objective does not always mean that you have the knowledge to explain how that worked. For instance, I can attempt to a technique to leave my body, to try to produce an out-of-body experience, and that may succeed. This doesn't mean I know what the mechanisms are, or that I found the proof that I actually left my body, or that this will prove that there is a subtle body, and so on, and that I lived our lives and that I am immortal. So normally pseudosciences, they tend to make too large claims, while science has to be developed by small collection of evidences, and accept that it takes time to validate those little discoveries and little evidence. And just to finish the fourth characteristics that I want to emphasize is that the field must be interdisciplinary. In a practical way, there must be cooperation between different researchers, different institutions, independent institutions. So one regulates the other, avoiding that knowledge is produced and viciously repeated knowledge. I don't know if this makes sense, like breathing new air from new interactions with new other researchers. So that's basically how he tries to differentiate cognitive scientific practices and cognitive pseudoscientific practices.
Okay, all right. So what you're saying is that the marks of pseudoscience would be like science is, carrying out experiments and replicability, and pseudoscience would be making large claims based on not as much evidence or not as much replication, and let's say a community that has pseudoscientific tendencies would have a tendency to be, let's say believers or adherents instead of people that are really objective and approach something just with a fresh mindset. And the third thing is that to prevent pseudoscience, you would need really interdisciplinarity to have people having kind of a checks and balances.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, I really look forward to your talk. And thanks for meeting with me. Did you want to say anything else before we closed out here?
Well, I guess I just want to thank you so much for having me too, and look forward for about a month or so. We're going to meet each other at the conference. Truly hope to I am very available for other interviews and other interactions, and I thank the listeners for their patience about my English and my explanations.
That's fine.
I hope to be made clear. If you want to leave my contacts, I don't know if anybody has questions.
If you have a website, we'll link to it. We'll link to it below. Yeah, thanks for meeting with me.
Yeah, all it's right. Great pleasure.
Yeah, mine as well. Interesting stuff.
Bye bye.
All right, see you soon. Bye bye.